I spent 3 weeks planning the perfect Mother's Day lunch for my family, decorating every corner of my house with fresh flowers, and preparing all of Marcus's favorite dishes from scratch. But when I called to add they were, my daughter-in-law, Kaisha, answered the phone with the cruelest words I'd ever heard. He chose to spend Mother's Day with his real mother, Ida's mine.
I hung up and cried alone in my empty dining room, surrounded by food that would go cold and untouched. But what she didn't know was that her vindictive little game would backfire in ways she never imagined. And by the end of that day, she would lose everything she thought she had won. If you're watching this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far my story has traveled. My name is Dorothy Williams, and I'm 68 years old. I raised my son Marcus as a single mother after his father walked out on us when Marcus was just 5. I worked double shifts at the textile factory in Birmingham, Alabama, saving every penny so he could go to college and become the successful architect he is today. For 35 years, it was just Marcus and me against the world. We had Sunday dinners together. He called me every day, and I was the first person he turned to for advice about everything from his career to his relationships. Then 3 years ago, he married Keisha Thompson, a 28-year-old marketing executive with perfectly straightened hair, designer clothes, and an attitude that could freeze hell over. From the moment I met her, I knew she saw me as competition rather than family. She had this way of smiling at me that never reached her eyes, and whenever Marcus and I were talking, she'd find some urgent reason to pull him away. At their wedding, I gave a speech about how proud I was of Marcus and how excited I was to welcome Keisha to our small but loving family. She sat there with that fake smile plastered on her face, but I saw the way she rolled her eyes when she thought no one was looking. After the reception, I overheard her telling one of her bridesmaids, "Thank God we're moving to Atlanta. I need some distance from his clingy mother." They moved to Atlanta 6 months after the wedding, and suddenly my daily phone calls with Marcus became weekly check-ins that Keisha always seemed to interrupt. When I'd call their house, she'd answer and tell me Marcus was busy, in the shower, or at work, even when I could hear the TV in the background and knew he was home. She had this sweet, syrupy voice she'd use with me, saying things like, "Oh, Miss Dorothy, Marcus is just so tired from work. Maybe you can call back later." But later never seemed to be a good time either. The first Mother's Day after they got married, Marcus called me at 8 p.m., clearly rushed and distracted. "Sorry, Mama. Keisha had this whole day planned for us. We went to her mother's church, then had lunch with her family. I meant to call earlier." I felt a stab of hurt, but told him I understood. After all, Keisha's mother lived in Atlanta too, and it made sense they'd want to include her in their celebrations. But it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. For 30 years, Marcus and I had our Mother's Day tradition. He'd take me to breakfast at Mel's Diner. We'd go to the botanical gardens and then come back to my house where I'd cook his favorite meal while he told me about everything going on in his life. It was our day, and suddenly I was an afterthought. Last year was worse. Marcus didn't call at all on Mother's Day. When I finally reached him the next evening, he sounded genuinely surprised. "Oh no, Mama. I'm so sorry. Keisha's mother had this big family gathering, and it went all day. Time just got away from me." I could hear Keisha in the background saying something about how her family always made such a big deal about holidays, and Marcus laughed in response. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I started noticing other changes too. Marcus used to visit Birmingham once a month, staying the weekend and helping me with projects around the house. After he married Keisha, those visits became every other month, then every 3 months, and always with Keisha in tow. She'd sit in my living room checking her phone constantly, making little sighs of boredom whenever Marcus and I started reminiscing about his childhood or discussing family matters. During their last visit in February, I was showing Marcus some old photo albums from when he was in high school. Keisha looked up from her phone long enough to say, "Baby, don't you think it's time your mother found some new hobbies instead of living in the past?" She said it with that same fake sweet smile, but the message was clear. I was stuck in the past, holding onto my son too tightly, and she was his future. Marcus didn't defend me. He just closed the photo album and suggested we watch a movie instead. That night, I heard them in the guest room, and Keisha was whispering something about boundaries and how I needed to let him grow up and have his own family now. Marcus's response was too quiet for me to hear, but I didn't hear him disagreeing with her either. After that visit, I made a decision. This Mother's Day would be different. I would pull out all the stops and plan something so special, so filled with love and memories, that Marcus would remember why our relationship mattered. I would show both him and Keisha that I wasn't some clingy old woman living in the past. I was his mother, and that bond was unbreakable. I started planning in early April. I called Marcus and told him I wanted to host Mother's Day lunch this year, something really special for the family. Just you, me, and Keisha, I said, making sure to include her so she couldn't accuse me of trying to exclude her. I'll make all your favorite dishes, and we can spend the whole afternoon together like we used to. Marcus sounded genuinely excited for the first time in months. That sounds great, Mama. I haven't had your fried chicken in forever. And your banana pudding, man. I've been craving that. I could hear the boy I raised in his voice, the son who used to sneak into the kitchen to steal tastes of whatever I was cooking. Keisha's been wanting to try your famous cornbread too, he added, though something in his tone suggested that might not be entirely true. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing like it was a royal banquet. I ordered fresh flowers from 3 different florists to create arrangements for every room. I had the house deep cleaned, the hardwood floors polished until they gleamed, and every piece of silver and crystal I owned carefully washed and arranged on the dining room table. The menu took days to plan. I decided on Marcus's absolute favorites, my grandmother's fried chicken recipe that had been in our family for 4 generations, honey cornbread made from scratch with real butter, collard greens slow-cooked with smoked turkey, mac and cheese that was more cheese than pasta, candied yams with marshmallows, and my famous banana pudding that Marcus used to beg me to make for every birthday and special occasion. I even planned activities for the afternoon. I had digitized hundreds of old family photos and created a slideshow of Marcus's childhood, from his first steps to his college graduation. I'd prepared stories about his great-grandmother, who had passed away when he was young, thinking Keisha might want to know more about the family history she'd married into. 3 days before Mother's Day, I called to confirm the time. Marcus answered, sounding distracted. Yeah, Mama. We'll be there at 1 o'clock. I'm really looking forward to it. But there was something off in his voice, a hesitation that made my stomach clench with worry. Is everything okay, baby? I asked. Yeah, everything's fine. Keisha's just been stressed about work lately. But we'll be there, don't worry. The night before Mother's Day, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over every detail in my mind, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. The flowers were arranged, the table was set with my best china, and I'd already started some of the prep work for the meal. I had to get up at 6 a.m. to start the chicken marinade and get the greens going in the slow cooker. Mother's Day morning arrived bright and beautiful. I was up before my alarm, moving through my kitchen like a conductor leading an orchestra. The chicken went into the buttermilk marinade. The greens started their slow simmer with onions and garlic, and the sweet smell of cornbread batter filled the air as I mixed it by hand, just like my grandmother taught me. By 10 a.m., my house smelled like heaven. The fried chicken was golden and crispy, the mac and cheese was bubbly and perfect, and the banana pudding was chilling in the refrigerator with its perfect peaks of meringue. I'd changed into my best dress, a navy blue number that Marcus always said brought out my eyes, and I'd even gotten my hair done the day before at the salon. At 12:30, I lit the candles on the dining room table and did a final check of everything. The flowers were perfect, the food was warming in the oven, and I'd even put together a small gift bag for Keisha with some bath products and a nice scarf I'd picked out. I wanted her to feel welcome, to see that I wasn't trying to compete with her, but to embrace her as part of our family. 1 o'clock came and went. I checked my phone, thinking maybe I'd missed a call about traffic. Nothing. At 1:15, I started to worry. Marcus was usually punctual, especially when it came to food. I called his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. By 1:30, I was pacing the living room, looking out the window every few minutes for their car. The food was still warm, but I was starting to feel that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. Had something happened? Was there an emergency? At 1:45, I called again. This time, Keisha answered. Hello. Her voice was bright and cheerful, with sounds of laughter and conversation in the background. Keisha, honey, it's Dorothy. I was wondering where you and Marcus are. Lunch has been ready for almost an hour. There was a pause, and I heard her say something to someone else, her hand partially covering the phone. Then she came back on the line. Oh, Miss Dorothy, didn't Marcus call you? We had a change of plans. My heart started pounding. A change of plans? What kind of change of plans? Well, my mother really wanted us to come over for Mother's Day, and you know how important family is. Marcus decided he wanted to spend the day with his real mother. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward and had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. His real mother? Well, you know what I mean. My mother is his mother-in-law now, and she's been so excited about having us over. She made this beautiful brunch, and all my cousins and aunts are here. It's like a real family celebration, not just... She paused, as if considering her words. Not just something small and quiet. I could hear Marcus's laugh in the background, genuinely happy and carefree. I could hear children playing, music, the sound of a big family gathering in full swing. Everything I had wanted to give him, but better, bigger, more exciting. But Keisha, I've been cooking all morning. I planned this whole day. Marcus promised he'd be here. Oh, I'm sure you'll find something to do with all that food. Maybe you can take some to the church or something. Marcus really needed this, Miss Dorothy. He needed to be with people who understand him and accept him as he is now, not as the little boy he used to be. The cruelty in her voice was unmistakable now. This wasn't about schedule conflicts or family obligations. This was deliberate. This was her way of showing me exactly where I stood in their marriage. Can I speak to Marcus, please? He's busy right now playing with the kids. I'll tell him you called. And then she hung up. I stood there in my dining room, surrounded by flowers and flickering candles, wearing my best dress and holding a dead phone. The smell of fried chicken and cornbread that had seemed so wonderful an hour ago now made me feel sick. I looked at the table set for 3, at the gift bag I'd prepared for Keisha, at the slideshow waiting on my laptop to share Marcus's childhood memories. I sank into my chair and cried. I cried for the little boy I'd raised by myself, working 2 jobs to give him everything he needed. I cried for all the Mother's Days we'd shared, just the 2 of us, when he'd tell me I was the most important person in his world. I cried for the future I thought we'd have, where his wife would become like a daughter to me, where we'd all be family together. But most of all, I cried because I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd lost my son to a woman who saw love as a competition that only one person could win. After I finished crying, something else started growing in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was anger. Pure, righteous anger at the calculated cruelty of what Keisha had done. She hadn't just changed their plans. She had orchestrated this whole thing to hurt me, to show me that she had the power to keep Marcus away from me whenever she wanted. But what Keisha didn't know about me was that I hadn't raised a successful man by being weak or giving up when things got tough. I had fought for everything important in my life, and I wasn't about to stop now. I dried my tears, put the food away in containers, and started planning. If Keisha wanted to play games, I would show her how a woman with 68 years of life experience played to win. The first thing I did was call my sister Beverly in Atlanta. Beverly was 2 years older than me and had always been the family detective, the one who knew everyone's business and had connections everywhere. If anyone could help me understand what was really going on in Marcus and Keisha's marriage, it would be Bev. Dorothy, baby, I've been waiting for this call for 2 years, she said when I told her what had happened. That girl has been working on Marcus since the day they got married, trying to turn him against you. But what she doesn't know is that my neighbor's daughter works with Keisha at that marketing firm. And honey, there are some things you need to know. Beverly told me that Keisha had been openly complaining about me at work for months, calling me clingy and possessive. She'd been telling her coworkers that Marcus was too dependent on his mother and that she was helping him become more independent. But more importantly, Beverly's source had overheard Keisha talking about how she planned to gradually cut me out of Marcus's life completely. She told someone at the office Christmas party that once she gets pregnant, she's going to make sure the baby doesn't have much contact with you either. She wants Marcus's kids to see her mother as their primary grandmother. This information hit me like ice water. It wasn't just about holidays or visits. Keisha was planning to erase me from my future grandchildren's lives too. But Beverly had more information. There's something else, Dorothy. My neighbor's daughter says Keisha's been having lunch with some man from another company. Every Thursday for the past 2 months, she meets him at this little cafe downtown. Could be business, but the girl says they looked awfully cozy the time she saw them. I felt my heart rate spike. Are you sure? I'm not saying she's cheating, but I'm saying it's worth looking into, especially if you're planning some kind of intervention. I spent the rest of Mother's Day planning my strategy. If Keisha thought she could manipulate Marcus by controlling information and isolating him from me, I would beat her at her own game. But I would be smarter about it. I wouldn't be the bitter mother-in-law trying to break up her son's marriage. I would be the concerned mother who discovered the truth about her daughter-in-law's character and had no choice but to share it. The next morning, I called a private investigator in Atlanta. I'd never hired one before, but I figured if I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. The investigator, a woman named Patricia Collins, listened to my story without judgment. Mrs. Williams, I handle cases like this more often than you might think. Usually it's wives suspicious about husbands, but sometimes it's family members who sense something isn't right. I'll need 2 weeks to do a thorough investigation. What exactly will you be looking for? Everything. Financial records, phone records if possible, patterns of behavior, and yes, I'll follow her to see if there's any truth to this lunch situation your sister mentioned. 2 weeks felt like an eternity, but I used the time wisely. I started reaching out to Marcus more frequently, but carefully. Instead of calling their house where Keisha might intercept, I started texting Marcus during work hours and calling his office line. I made sure every interaction was light and positive, never mentioning Mother's Day or complaining about Keisha. When he asked why I was calling his office, I told him I'd been having trouble with my cell phone and found it easier to reach him during the day. He seemed to accept this explanation, and gradually we started having brief but regular conversations again. During these calls, I started noticing things. Marcus sounded tired and stressed in ways that had nothing to do with work. When I asked how things were going at home, he'd give vague answers like fine or, married life. When I asked about Keisha specifically, he'd change the subject or give short responses. One day, I asked if they were planning to visit Birmingham anytime soon, and Marcus sighed heavily before answering. I don't know, Mama. Keisha says she's really busy with work right now, and she thinks maybe we've been traveling too much. She wants us to focus on building our life in Atlanta. There it was again. Keisha's voice speaking through my son, making decisions about our relationship without any input from him or me. 2 weeks after I'd hired Patricia, she called with her preliminary report. Mrs. Williams, I think you're going to want to meet in person to discuss what I've found. Can you come to Atlanta this weekend? My heart started pounding. Is it bad? Let's just say your instincts about your daughter-in-law were correct. I drove to Atlanta that Saturday, my stomach churning with anxiety and anticipation. Patricia met me at a small cafe near downtown, carrying a thick folder that she placed carefully on the table between us. Before I show you these, Mrs. Williams, I need to ask what you plan to do with this information. Some of what I've discovered could seriously damage your daughter-in-law's marriage and career. I need to know what kind of person my son is married to. Patricia opened the folder and spread out a series of photographs. The first few showed Keisha having lunch with a tall, well-dressed black man at various restaurants around Atlanta. In the photos, they were sitting close together, laughing, and in one image, he was holding her hand across the table. This is Derek Morrison. He's the regional marketing director for a competing firm. They've been meeting every Thursday for 3 months, but it's not business lunches. Look at this. She showed me a photo taken outside a hotel. Keisha and Derek were embracing in the parking lot, and it was clearly more than a friendly hug. I followed them to this hotel twice. They went in together and stayed for approximately 2 hours each time. I was able to confirm they registered under false names. My hands were shaking as I looked at the photos. Despite everything Keisha had done to me, I hadn't expected this. Marcus was a good husband, faithful and loving. He deserved better than this. There's more, Patricia continued. I was able to access some financial records. Your daughter-in-law has been transferring money to a separate account that your son doesn't know about. Small amounts, but over the past year, she's moved almost $15,000. Is she planning to leave him? It's possible. Or she might be preparing for a divorce where she can claim she has fewer assets than she actually does. Either way, she's being deceptive about finances. Patricia showed me more evidence. Credit card receipts for expensive gifts that weren't given to Marcus. Hotel bookings on dates when she told Marcus she was working late or having girls' nights out. Phone records showing hundreds of texts and calls to Derek Morrison's number. The pattern is clear, Mrs. Williams. This has been going on for months, possibly longer. Your daughter-in-law is having an affair, hiding money, and based on some conversations I overheard, she's been telling her lover that her marriage is essentially over. I stared at the photographs, feeling a mixture of vindication and heartbreak. I'd been right about Keisha's character, but I took no joy in discovering that my son was being betrayed by the woman he loved. What do you recommend I do with this information? That depends on your goals. If you want to protect your son, you need to get this information to him in a way that he can't dismiss or ignore. But you also need to be prepared for the possibility that he might blame you for investigating his wife. I thought about this for a long time. Marcus might be angry with me initially, but eventually he would realize I had done this out of love to protect him from someone who was deceiving him. And maybe, just maybe, once Keisha was out of our lives, Marcus and I could rebuild our relationship. I want copies of everything, I told Patricia. And I want you to keep investigating until I decide how to handle this. Over the next week, I struggled with how to approach Marcus. I couldn't just call him and say, your wife is cheating on you. He would never believe me, and Keisha would find a way to spin it as a desperate attempt by his jealous mother to break up their marriage. I needed a plan that would expose Keisha's deception in a way that Marcus couldn't ignore or rationalize away. And I needed it to happen in a way that would make it impossible for her to blame me or manipulate the situation. Then I remembered something. Marcus had mentioned during one of our phone calls that he and Keisha were planning a small anniversary party for their third wedding anniversary in June. Nothing big, just close friends and family at their apartment in Atlanta. Keisha wanted to keep it simple, he'd said. Maybe 20 people, just appetizers and drinks. She's been planning it for weeks. An idea started forming in my mind. What if I could arrange for Keisha's deception to be exposed at her own party, in front of all their friends, where she couldn't spin the story or manipulate the narrative? I called Patricia back. I need you to find out everything you can about their anniversary party. Who's invited, what time it starts, every detail you can get. What are you planning, Mrs. Williams? I'm planning to give my daughter-in-law exactly what she deserves. Patricia was able to find out that the party was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Marcus and Keisha's apartment. The guest list included about 15 couples, mostly Keisha's co-workers and a few of Marcus's friends from architecture school. I noticed that I wasn't on the guest list, which didn't surprise me but still stung. Here's what I'm thinking, I told Patricia during our next meeting. I need you to arrange for Derek Morrison to show up at that party. How exactly would I do that? You said you overheard Keisha telling him that her marriage was essentially over. What if he received an anonymous message saying that Keisha was ready to make their relationship public and inviting him to surprise her at the party? Patricia looked skeptical. That's risky, Mrs. Williams. If it backfires, your son could end up more hurt than he already will be. My son is going to be hurt no matter what. The question is whether he finds out the truth now, when he's young enough to start over, or whether he finds out in 5 years after they've had children and she's taken half of everything he's worked for. We spent the next hour crafting the perfect message. It needed to sound like it could have come from Keisha, but also be vague enough that Derek would want to show up to get clarification. Patricia would send it from an anonymous email account claiming to be a mutual friend who was helping Keisha coordinate the surprise. The message read, Derek, Keisha wants to make a big announcement at her anniversary party this Saturday. She's ready to tell Marcus everything and start your life together. She asked me to invite you to come at 8 p.m. sharp. She wants to surprise everyone, including Marcus. The address is attached. She says it's time to stop hiding. It was perfect. Vague enough that Derek would need to show up to understand what was happening, but specific enough that he believed Keisha was ready to leave Marcus for him. The week leading up to the party was torture. I kept imagining all the ways the plan could go wrong. What if Derek didn't show up? What if he called Keisha first to verify the message? What if Marcus somehow blamed me for the whole thing? But I reminded myself why I was doing this. Marcus deserved to know the truth about the woman he'd married. He deserved a chance at real happiness with someone who would love and respect him the way I'd taught him to love and respect others. The day of the party, I drove to Atlanta and checked into a hotel room about 10 minutes from Marcus and Keisha's apartment complex. I didn't plan to go to the party myself, but I wanted to be nearby in case Marcus needed me after everything fell apart. At 7:45 p.m., Patricia called me. I'm parked across the street from their building. The party's in full swing. I can see people on their balcony. Derek Morrison just pulled into the parking lot. My heart started racing. Is he going up? He's walking toward the building now. He's carrying flowers and what looks like a bottle of wine. I closed my eyes and said a prayer. Not for revenge, but for truth. For my son to finally see clearly what his marriage really was. 20 minutes later, Patricia called again. It's happening. I can hear shouting from their apartment. People are starting to leave. I've seen at least 6 people come out of the building in the last 5 minutes. What kind of shouting? I can't make out words, but it's definitely heated. A man's voice, very angry, and a woman crying. At 9:15, my phone rang. It was Marcus, and he was sobbing. Mama, can you come get me? Please, I need you to come get me. Baby, what happened? Where are you? I'm at the Marriott downtown. I can't go back to the apartment. Mama, you were right about her. You were right about everything. I was in my car before we finished talking, my hands shaking as I started the engine. I found Marcus in the hotel lobby, still wearing his dress shirt and tie from the party, but his face was red and blotchy from crying. He looked like the little boy I used to comfort after nightmares, and my heart broke for him. Tell me what happened, baby. This guy showed up at our party. Keisha's been having an affair with him for months. He thought she was going to leave me for him, and when he realized that wasn't what was happening, he told everyone everything. In front of all our friends, Mama. Everyone heard about how they'd been meeting at hotels, how she told him our marriage was a mistake. Marcus broke down again, and I held him while he cried. My own tears started falling, not from sadness, but from relief that my son finally knew the truth. She tried to blame you, he continued. She said you must have hired someone to investigate her, that you were so jealous and vindictive that you set the whole thing up. But even if you did, Mama, it doesn't change what she did. It doesn't change that she's been lying to me for months. I did hire someone, I admitted. After Mother's Day, after the way she treated me, I needed to know what kind of person you'd married. I needed to protect you. Marcus pulled back and looked at me. You knew. I suspected. And I was afraid that if I didn't find out the truth, she would destroy our relationship and then destroy your marriage anyway, on her terms, when it benefited her most. I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm sorry about Mother's Day, and I'm sorry I let her come between us. She told me you were too possessive, that you couldn't accept that I was grown up and married now. But she was the possessive one. She was the one trying to control everything. We talked until almost midnight, sitting in that hotel lobby while Marcus told me everything he'd discovered about his wife's deceptions. The secret money, the lies about working late, the way she'd manipulated him into distancing himself from me by claiming I was the problem. I keep thinking about Mother's Day, he said. You spent all that time cooking and decorating, and she made me hurt you like that. She knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't your fault, baby, but I chose her over you. I believed her when she said you were trying to interfere with our marriage. I should have known better. You loved her. There's no shame in that. Marcus moved back to Birmingham the next week. He filed for divorce immediately, and thanks to Patricia's investigation, He had enough evidence of adultery and financial deception to protect himself from Keisha's attempts to claim half his assets. Keisha tried to fight the divorce, claiming that I had sabotaged her marriage and that Marcus was making a mistake. She even came to my house once, screaming on my front porch about how I had destroyed her life. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Marcus had seen her true character with his own eyes. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Marcus kept the apartment in Atlanta, but decided to move back to Birmingham permanently. He said he wanted to be closer to family, to real family, the people who actually loved him unconditionally. 6 months after the divorce, Marcus started dating a lovely woman named Angela, who worked as a pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital. The first time he brought her to Sunday dinner, she insisted on helping me cook and spent the evening asking me to share family stories and recipes. "I'd love to learn how to make your famous banana pudding," she told me. Marcus talks about it constantly. As I watched her and Marcus laughing together in my kitchen, I realized that some battles are worth fighting, especially when you're fighting for love instead of against it. Keisha moved back in with her mother after the divorce. Her affair with Derek Morrison ended badly when she discovered he was also married and had no intention of leaving his wife. She lost her job at the marketing firm after word spread about her behavior at the anniversary party. And according to Beverly's sources, she's been struggling to find work in Atlanta's tight-knit business community. Sometimes I feel bad about how completely Keisha's life fell apart. But then I remember Mother's Day and the cruelty in her voice when she told me Marcus was spending the day with his real mother. I remember all the ways she tried to poison my relationship with my son and how she was planning to keep my future grandchildren away from me. I didn't destroy Keisha's marriage. I simply revealed the truth about what she had already destroyed through her own choices and deceptions. Marcus and I have Sunday dinner together every week now, just like we used to. Angela joins us most of the time, and she's become like the daughter I never had. Last month, Marcus told me they're planning to get engaged, and Angela has already asked if I'll help her plan the wedding. I want our children to have the kind of grandmother who teaches them family recipes and tells them stories about their daddy when he was little, she said. Marcus is lucky to have a mother who loves him enough to protect him, even when it's hard. This Mother's Day, we're all cooking together, Marcus, Angela, and me. We're making all of Marcus's favorites, plus a few dishes that Angela wants to learn. The table will be set for 3 again, but this time it will be filled with people who genuinely love and respect each other. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone who hurt you. Sometimes it's simply living well, surrounded by people who understand what real family looks like. And sometimes when someone tries to take away everything you love, the best thing you can do is fight for it with everything you have. Keisha taught me that love isn't a competition, it's a gift. And the people who truly deserve that gift will never ask you to choose between loving them and loving the other people who matter to you. My son learned that lesson too, and now we're both surrounded by people who understand that real love multiplies when it's shared, instead of diminishing when it's divided. That's a Mother's Day gift that keeps giving all year long.